Rhino episode 12 of the Bloodborne series. We're going to be painting the Hunter Mob. Doing a little something different. We're going to be using two separate types of paints, both from Citadel. So we're going to be using the contrast paints and regular base paints from Citadel. So strap on. This is your first time at the channel, or you've been watching this series and you haven't subscribed yet. I don't know why. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that bell button so you can see when these videos come out if you enjoy them. And I would appreciate that. Makes me feel good inside. All right, let's go. After scraping off all your mold lines, which there wasn't very many on here, we're going to be using some sticky tack to put on a little Citadel thing, and we're going to spray in with some Chaos Black spray paint. If you are watching this, go ahead and look in the description for all of our paint lists and supplies if you need them. After the black has completely dried, we're going to take some Corax White. We're going to spray it from above and a little bit at an angle. So we're just hitting those top portions, and we're going to make that contrast from the light and the dark. And this is a crucial step if you're using contrast paint, coupled with the next step we're about to do. So make sure you do this step. And the most crucialist, if that's even a word, it's probably not, whatever, step in doing this is getting a dry brush and using white. I'm using Praxeti White, and I am highlighting even further the top portion of our miniature. When we use contrast paint, that is going to make such a difference, trust me. And we're going to use some Baneblade Brown to kind of lighten up or darken up or make a little different color from the contrast on the face and the hair of our miniatures. You can do a little bit onto the clothing as well if you would like, but I'm mostly hitting the face and the hair, and that's just going to kind of make it a little brownish color, because if you're looking at the card art, you can notice that they're werewolves or whatever they are. Somebody's probably going to leave me a comment about how I don't know Bloodborne, and I don't. I've never played the game, and I want to. It's on the list. I just don't have a lot of time, so in the future I will. But we're hitting those dry brushes in those areas, so when the contrast paint comes on, you'll notice a difference right away, trust me. The first contrast paint we're going to use is Cygor Brown. Now we're going to be hitting all of our wood bits with this as well. So the hat, the handles to the axes, and the torches along with the shield. Now the one thing about contrast paints that I do enjoy is it saves you a metric F-ton of time. And when we are batch painting, specifically these models where there's 4 of them, and there is 10 pounds of crap stuffed in a 10-pound bag in these small miniatures, this is going to save us an obscene amount of time. And we're doing this just so we can get these miniatures on the table. We want them to look good, decent, and it adds to the flavor of the game. It overall adds to how awesome the game is, in my opinion, when you have painted miniatures. So that's what the contrast paint does. It's expensive, but to me it is worth the investment if you are an avid miniature painter or just learning and you want to get better. This saves a ton of time, especially when you use base paints as highlights, as we're going to do. For the most left hunter mob person, the angry werewolf that he is, or whatever he is, we're going to use Basilicanum Grey. And again, as you're putting this on, you're going to notice that, hey, it's kind of thin, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. But when you put it on and you automatically notice how those whites and darks are contrasted, hence contrast paint, on our miniature, it really makes it stand out. And when it dries, it really looks decent for the minimal amount of work you have to do. I thoroughly enjoy these paints. For the undervest of our mob character, we're going to be using a little Shyish Purple, And just be careful. I use the same brush throughout the entire time, and it seemed to work out just fine. I didn't overlap at all, so I just kind of rushed through it. For our pants, we're going to be using a little Wyldwood, and as you can notice, as you probably already are, that as the first couple paints that we put on have started to dry, it really is starting to poke through the whites and the darks, and it's looking already pretty decent for the minimal amount of work we've already done. For the second guy, we're going to be using a little Gryph-Charge Grey for his top hat. I don't know why they call it a gray. It looks more like a blue turquoise to me. Maybe I'm colorblind. Maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't know, but that's the color we're using. For the trench coat on our second guy, we're going to be using a little Levidadon Blue. Now just be a little careful when we're doing this because obviously we're hitting other portions as it's touching our miniature where we're painting. Just be a little careful. But if you get any on something, it's okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. And for his little undervest and tie or whatever it is, we're going to be using a little Flesh Tears Red for that. For his pants, we're going to use Gore-Grunta Fur. Make sure you're being cognizant of the knee-high boots that he's wearing and do not hit those. The other good thing I like about those paints is it's come straight out of the pot. You don't thin them, don't put them on anything, coming straight out of the pot, and it's just, you save time, effort, and extra paint if you're using a well or a wet palette. You don't have to use it, which is nice. For our third guy, Gryph-Hound Orange for his jacket. This dude is going to turn out to look like John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. And all I'm trying to do is match the card art that we have in the game box. And he's going to look like he belongs at the disco. So just wait, because it's pretty funny. For his vest, we're going to use Militarium Green. And for the pants, we're going to use Apothecary White. You can use a gray or whatever you want for this if you don't want the white. I just chose the white, and he turns out to look like he's straight out of the 70s with a headband and all sweating to the 80s. I kind of love it, not going to lie. For our boots, we're going to be using Black Templar. This is probably my favorite contrast paint out of all of them, because you can use this in a multitude of ways. Not only as a contrast paint, you can use it as a wash that really darkens up whatever you're trying to darken down, obviously. I've used it for other things in miniature painting, so not just contrast painting. For the torches, we're using a little Iyanden Yellow. I'm sure I'm pronouncing all these names right. This is a very orangey yellowish. It's perfect for flames. Absolutely perfect. And for our face and hair, we're going to be using a little Darkoath Flesh. There's a couple contrast paints you could have used. I went with this one because I really wanted the face to kind of accentuate, because if you look at the card art, you really can't see anything. So it really is just like, whatever. So we're gonna use that, and then we're gonna highlight up here in a minute. With the contrast paints complete, we're going to now move on to some of our normal base paints that we use. And of course, all of our metal bits we're going to use Leadbelcher on. This is a very dark silver. It's like the peanut butter and jelly, this and Nulin Oil of Citadel painting. It's amazing, works perfectly. So we're going to be hitting the axe, the metal portions on our shield, and the buttons here in a second. Because you can tell there's a couple buttons. If you didn't want to use Leadbelcher on that, you could have used like a Retributor Armor or a Screaming Bell if you wanted a brass look. It's up to you. Also, do not forget the rifle that our guy is using, and of course the lantern, as you've already seen it pass by. And just be very careful when you're painting those buttons. Just nice little daub of paint right on it. Just be very careful and cognizant of what you're doing, because you just obviously put the red and every other color on the little vests they're wearing. For our Sweat into the 80s hairband, we're going to be using a little Rathbone to make it just a little white. It looks like he's got head bandages on in the card art, which is not put onto the miniature, so whatever. And finally, we're going to use some Nulin Oil on our peanut butter and jelly silver Leadbelcher. Make sure you hit all of them, and this is obviously going to really bring out that lantern and make it stand out once we put some highlights on it. And if you wanted to be done, you could right now. This is perfectly tabletop material, but we're going to take it up a notch. Optional. To highlight all of our metal bits, we're going to be using Ironbreaker. And for the lantern, we want to hit, obviously, the raised areas. So around the canteen, light canteen, I guess you could say. The handle and the little portion where our light is going to come out, which we'll highlight towards the very end of this video. Obviously, since we're in the highlighting mode, we want to be very careful when we're highlighting. We only want to hit the raised areas, specifically on the gun, and we want to be very careful not to hit all of the pieces of miniature we've already painted with different colors. The shield portion, specifically on the back that you can't see, it's optional to paint. I just hit the one that his hand is holding and you can see where it's at. The other portions I really couldn't really see it, so I really didn't hit it. And then the axe, of course, we want to lighten that up a little bit. Now we are going to highlight our facial features. Now I selected a light tone of Flayed One Flesh, and the reason I did this is it's going to look super bright once you put it on with the paint, but once it dries it kind of mellows out a little bit. And I wanted to kind of express the hair and the facial features of our miniature, as they are kind of mean looking, and I like that. So we want to hit those cheekbones and nose, and we want to hit little strands of hair. We're just going around and we're hitting every little piece. Also our hands and everything else on our miniature. But if you get too much on, take a finger and just smudge it off real quick, and just do very light little pieces to kind of highlight it up and kind of express those nice little facial features. So we're not doing too much. We just want to get those nice little areas that we think would hit the light and would be able to see just a little bit extra detail in those areas. And don't forget the knuckles. Also, go over to our Instagram at nerd.nights, where we're always posting new things and kind of keeping you up to date with new videos that are coming out. I kind of post hints of what's coming out in the near future, so yeah, go check that out. Now we're going to highlight our contrast paints with some base paints. And the first one we're going to use is a little Baneblade Brown to do our hat. So we're just going to hit those edges on the hat, and it's just going to make it stand out, have a little contrast between light and dark. The second thing we're going to use with the same color is the pants. Now, when you're doing highlights with contrast paints, we want to already hit the areas that are brightened up by the undertone that we did with the white and the Praxeti White, and it's sticking out through the contrast paint. So we're just going to hit those areas, and it's just going to brighten up a little bit, and you can notice that how much it makes a difference from those highlighted zenithal highlights we did from earlier with the contrast paints to now lighting it up with the layer paints. It really, really looks good. For our jacket on the left miniature, we're going to be using a little Stromvermin Fur, and we're just going to be highlighting edges of our miniature, raised areas, kind of putting in some of that lighter gray that's going to stand out in front, and hitting the little spots, edging at the bottom, the tie that goes around it where you can tie it in the front, stuff like that. And we're just doing very little bits and pieces here and there, highlighting. Just watch what I'm doing and really bringing out that gray to a lighter gray and really making those contrast colors with the paint really start popping out. To highlight our vest, we're going to use a little Naggaroth Night. And again, we're just hitting those raised areas. Be careful of the buttons. To move on to our second miniature in the group, we're going to use a little Russ Grey for his hat. And we are hitting the raised areas again, obviously not getting in the recesses, and we are edge highlighting that hat. For his coat, we're going to be using a little Night Lord's Blue, and this is a very subtle tone. Obviously, it's a dark tone, and his jacket almost looks purple, but it's not. I think it's the lighting. I'm not sure. But we're just going to highlight some of that. We're doing the same exact thing we did with the last Hunter mob, and just hitting those raised areas, making that contrast. To highlight our red vest, again, only raised areas, we're using the Wazdakka Red. For the pants, we're using a little Skrag Brown, and again, you only want to hit the areas that are already highlighted through the contrast paint with the white background. That's it. And it's going to look really, really nice. Raised areas, get those nice little colorations in there. Really look good. To outline our boots, we're going to be using a little Eshin Grey, and we just want to hit the top portion of our boots and maybe a little bit on the toe of the boot, and that's it. For the sweat into the 80s hairband, using a little Ushabti Bone. God, I love that hairband. It's so amazing. For his John Travolta jacket, we're going to be using a little Fire Dragon Bright, doing the same exact thing we are doing with the other two mob hunters, and we are just highlighting raised areas, the edges, and just areas that'll look bright already, and it really makes it stand out. For his vest and tie, you can use a little Deathworld Forest to give it that nice light to dark green contrast paint. And for the Saturday Night Fever pants, we're going to be using a little Adminastratum Grey. And again, same exact techniques as the other two before. Hit those light areas, raised areas, leave the recesses alone. And to highlight our flames, we're going to be using a little Iyriel Yellow on the raised areas. Obviously, do not get in the recesses, and sparingly use this because it's going to brighten up that flame, but it's going to give it that three-tone look of a flame, and it looks really good, actually. And for our torch handles, Doombull Brown. Make sure you do a 360 on it. Now this is an optional step. I did it because I wanted a little nastiness, but they don't have this in the card art, so I kind of went off the rails on this one, so do or don't do it. But I'm using some Evil Sun Scarlet to drop into their eye sockets, basically, kind of make them look a little bit more demonized, like a little nasty, just a little crazy, or angry at the world. And while that is completely drying in the eyes, I'm using some Lamenters Yellow on the front of our lantern. And for our final highlight, before we paint the base, I'm using a little Wild Rider Red to get in those eyes. And that's just kind of make it a two-tone eye look. Again, this is optional, but I just kind of wanted to make it a little bit lighter on those eyes, which wasn't bad. And finally, our base. Your favorite part. And mine, because that means it's done. And there you have it. Looks pretty freaking good. Not bad. Contrast paints. People might hate them. I love them. I'm using them as a positive, not negative. Let's keep the good vibes going. So you did a great job. I'm proud of you. Your game group's proud of you. Everybody's proud of you. Thank you for watching. If you're not a subscriber and you're still watching right now, please subscribe. Consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing tons of videos. I'm going to be doing this for a long time. I really enjoy doing it. And the more people that leave me comments, the more people that subscribe to the videos, watch the videos, it only motivates me more to do more videos and more every week if you enjoy this. So thank you for watching, and paint on.